Ma'am, you're on mute.
Hemlata ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Sorry for the interruption. Uh, Thank you, Mehek. On behalf of the Department of Philosophy, I welcome you all, dear Principal Ma'am, Professor Harpreet Kaur, our invited guest speaker, Ms. Antara Vats, colleagues, friends, and students. Thank you, Principal Ma'am, for being here. Your graceful presence is always a great source of inspiration, and your constant support always a great source of encouragement. Ms. Mehak just informed that today is the second lecture on the topic of philosophy, human and technology. In the first lecture, Professor Chandra briefed us about science myths and philosophical implications. And today we have among us Ms. Antara Vats, who would shed light on the topic of manipulation of human agency by social media algorithms, truth versus hype. In an article for Law and Liberty, Michael Matheson Miller, a research fellow at the Acton Institute, reflects on the book 10 Arguments for Deleting Your Social Media Accounts Right Now, written by Jaron Lanier, and shares thought provoking ideas about the dangers and risks involved with social media. Lanier believes that social media and companies like Facebook and Google are practicing behavior modification that harms the individual and society and undermines economic dignity. He condemns the ability of social media sites to monitor user action and notes through algorithms that monitor our behavior and activities, Google and other free social media are changing our behavior without our even knowing it. With advertisers watching us rather than consumers simply viewing advertisements, there are many negative implications, including to undermine free will. And free will has always been a very important component of philosophical thinking. In this day and age of technology, social media has seen an exponential rise, be it the form of catching up with friends, relaying information to colleagues, networking with the like minded people, or just sit back and enjoy a YouTube video. Social media has managed to govern the major part of human life. Characteristically, the monetization of these services has led to an increased focus on AI based algorithms which govern the advertisements and recommendations you see while using an application, showing your targeted ads based on how you respond to similar things. To bust all the myths regarding these algorithms, we have with us Ms. Antara Vats as our invited speaker, who at such a young age has great achievements in this field of responsible technology and has received global recognition when she made it to the 100 Brilliant Women in AI Ethics list for the year 2021. Many congratulations, Ms. Watts. I'm sure your presence and success would inspire our students a lot. Before hearing your views on the topic, I would like to invite our principal ma'am to address us. Over to you, principal ma'am. Professor Harpreet Kaur. I have just received a message ki ma'am has still not joined because she's into some other meeting and she will join as soon as she's free. So I would now, hand over the virtual mic to Mehek for the proceedings, further proceedings. Mehek, over to you.
Moving ahead, I would now like to introduce the speaker for the day, Ms. Antara Watts. Ms. Watts is currently working as research analyst at the Cyber Peace Foundation. She received her multidisciplinary education from Ambedkar University, Delhi in political science, sociology, and psychology. She also holds a master's in public policy from the Institute of from the Institute of Public Policy, National Law School of India University, Bengaluru. Her multidisciplinary lens has enabled her to explore the interrelationships between machine learning and social learning. Ms. Watts began her journey in technology policy with her contributions towards establishing AI policy exchange to inform everyday citizens about the most pressing issues around AI policy and governance. During her stint at Chase India, she had worked on a report which proposed policy recommendations for the regulation of non-personal data ahead of its consideration by Gopal Krishnan Committee for Non-Personal Data. Later, she also developed public policy responses to tackle gender-based violence on online platforms and create safe online spaces for young adolescents as a part-time consultant with Delhi-based policy think tanks. Recently, at Cyber Peace Foundation, Ms. Watts co-authored recommendations addressing gaps in science, technology, and innovation policy 2020, revised non-personal data governance framework 2020, and the national strategy on blockchain 2021. Earlier last year, her insights on building a career in responsible tech were featured in the Responsible Tech Guide brought out by All Tech is Human in partnership with NYU's Alliance for Public Interest Technology. Her continuing efforts to make AI more accessible for everyone recently received global recognition when she made it to the 100 Brilliant Women in AI Ethics list for 2021. It is my pleasure to call you via this virtual platform for an informative and interactive lecture on the manipulation of human agency by social media algorithm, truth versus hype. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mehak. Thank you so much for a generous introduction. And thank you, Hemlata ma'am, for actually setting a wonderful context to this conversation that we are going to have. You have actually made my task easier by explaining the first half of my presentation. And then I will start with explaining the ways that we can actually make human agency a reality for all of us. I'm extremely grateful to the Department of Philosophy at Mata Sundari College for Women, University of Delhi, for inviting me to the ICPR sponsored periodic lecture series on philosophy, humans, and technology. I'd start my presentation now. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sangeeta. So today's presentation, as Mehak ma'am and Dr. Hemlata have already mentioned, is on manipulation of human agency by social media algorithms, truth versus hype. The question to ask today is social media impacting our lives, or are we making those decisions? I will be adding the links to all the reports I'll be citing in the chat box. You can post your questions in the chat box and I'll be answering them in the last 15 minutes of the presentation. Have you ever wondered that how do algorithms function on Twitter? Which tweets come first? How are they managed? And have you ever watched a video or movie because YouTube or Netflix recommended it to you? Or added a friend on Facebook from the list of people you may know? These platforms are actually driven by algorithms, which rank and recommend content for us based on our data. What are algorithms then? Algorithms are a set of rules to be followed in calculations or other problem-solving operations, especially by a computer. So one thing that has remained constant throughout quarantine and the pandemic is the seemingly endless stream of content on Netflix, HBO, Prime, Disney Plus, and more. I hope all of you have seen The Social Dilemma. In case you've missed it, directed by Jeff Orlowski, The Social Dilemma explores the effect of smartphones and social networks on human behavior, blending talking head interviews with some well-known Silicon Valley leaders and fictional after-school dramatizations of what happens when Johnny and Janie scroll through feeds all day. The film presents itself as an urgent warning about our modern condition. This 1 hour and 34 long documentary discusses everything from the original intent of social media at the time of creation to the alarming and dangerous impact the platforms have on human behavior, mental health, and screen time consumption patterns. In a quick series of interviews, we get to meet many of the tech experts who were once involved in creating these online platforms, including Google, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. These figures in tech share everything from their experiences to where they are today and the guilt that they feel as we know it. So, the society and the film also dives deeper into the effectiveness of social media advertising and remarketing campaigns that attract customers through highly targeted ad placements and quick in app purchasing opportunities. It briefly mentions how misinformation is also spread on WhatsApp, which leads to mob violence. The question then remains if these are themselves problems or these are the symptoms of a larger, deeper problem. The idea that algorithmic recommendation engines are at the heart of all our problems leaves vast swaths of the internet that are arguably just as important as the big social networks out. But I find it very concerning at how appealing so many people find the idea that social networks are uniquely responsible for all of society's problems. In today's talk, I try to uncover the propositions proposed by the movie and the gaps in its understanding of the problem. It's first really important to understand how social media algorithms function and what information are they collecting. As ma'am mentioned, that experts believe that tech companies are not passively observing our behavior and acting as a consequence, they are actually actively influencing our behavior so as to make sure that we become more predictable. By conditioning our actions, company can predict outcomes in a better way and know what to sell you. So the revenue models of all these social media companies and the big tech firms works on advertisements of various brands. And the goal of several social media companies then it is to maximize clicks. They are designed to show or recommend stuff that will increase the probability of users clicking on it. And since clicking is what generates revenue for the platform. So this infographic that I have presented on the slide is by True People Search. This company had conducted this study. They had probed into the privacy policy of 11 of the biggest tech companies in the world and found out what exactly do they know about us? What information are they collecting? So big tech companies record data like income level, political and religious views, credit card information, your calendar events, all your search history, and visited websites along with the content that you have viewed or engaged with. So for example, a click-through optimization algorithm is more profitable if it can better product what people are going to click on. So it can exactly feed what they want and increase the number of clicks. And to optimize it, it needs to know your comfort zone, and anything outside of your comfort zone is not something that it will show to you. They want you to turn into a predictable clicker, making it easier to perform actions such as selling you some things. And companies have figured out that they can do this by using your data and by gradually modifying or emphasizing their algorithms according to it. So this problem has also reached the world of politics. It's estimated that over 1 billion was spent on digital political ads, almost 50 times as much was spent in 2008. This field is growing at a tremendous rate. Political campaigns build scoring systems on potential voters based on your likelihood of voting for a given party, your stance on a given issue, and the extent to which you are persuadable on that issue. It's the ultimate example of asymmetric information where the politicians know exactly how they can convince you and manipulate you, and how the voters will vote eventually if they are nudged to believe in information that the politicians want to share with you. You might be aware of the Cambridge Analytica incident that happened in 2018. The movie Social Dilemma also mentions it briefly. The Facebook Cambridge Analytica data scandal, for those of you who don't know, concerned the obtaining of personal information of millions of Facebook users without their consent by British consulting firm Cambridge Analytica to be used for political advertising. The data was collected through an app called This Is Your Digital Life, developed by data scientist Alexander and his company Global Science Research in 2013. This app actually consisted of a series of questions to be built psychological profiles on users and collected the personal data of the users' Facebook friends via Facebook's Open Graph platform. This app then harvested that data of up to 87 million Facebook profiles. And this data was used to provide analytical assistance to the 2016 presidential campaigns of Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. So is the data collected actually being manipulated for political reasons? What does the evidence state on computational propaganda? I will share the insights from a report published by the Oxford Institute titled the Global Disinformation Report in 2019. What they did was they monitored the global organization of social media manipulation by governments and political parties for over 3 years and came out with a series of insights that they have received from the data. They realized that organized social media manipulation has more than doubled since 2017, with 70 countries using computational propaganda, which is bots, to manipulate public opinion. In 45 democracies, politicians and political parties have used computational propaganda tools by amassing fake followers or spreading manipulated media to garner voter support. In 26 authoritarian states, government entities have used bots as a tool of information control to suppress public opinion and press freedom, discredit criticism, and drown out political dissent. Foreign influence operations, primarily over Facebook and Twitter, have been attributed to cyber troop activities in 7 countries, namely China, India, Russia, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. China has also emerged as a major player in this global disinformation order. It uses social media platforms to target international audience with disinformation. Over 25 countries have been also working with private companies or strategic communication firms like Cambridge Analytica, offering a computational propaganda as a service. And Facebook remains the platform of choice for social media manipulation, with evidence of formally organized campaigns taking place in 56 countries. So there was also a report by Tabrez Ahmed Niazi in 2019, which talked about digital propaganda, political bots, and polarized politics in India. And he talks about how digital propaganda is used to manipulate public opinion during crisis or emergency situations. He actually used Twitter data on 2 international conflicts between India and Pakistan, the Uri attack and the subsequent surgical strike. And it was found out that online public opinion has been manipulated by a handful of sources that are driven by algorithms. And this online public opinion has also entered the offline debate because of the contextual hybridity and the emergence of hybrid media system. So is it just me, or all of this sounds extremely scaring and intimidating? Moreover, doesn't it sound like we are all blaming the algorithms for all that is wrong? And that is exactly the approach that is adopted by technological determinism. So technological determinism is the view that technological changes cause changes in the society, in the rest of the society and culture as technology changes. Given the proliferation of new technology in modern times, technological determinism debates continually get renewed. Now, there is soft and hard technological determinism. While the soft argues that technology is one important force amongst others, hard technology determinism argues that technology is the main and the significant driver and argues that social influences have little effect on the nature of technology. So, in the most extreme situations of technological determinism, autonomous agents in the social world cause shifts in independent variables of social relations rather than affecting them. So, they completely transform the social relationships as we know them. As seen in the previous slides as well, experts have stated that social media platforms have been used to sway public consensus, they manipulate us into buying more products, they manipulate us into staying on platforms more, and are responsible for misinformation using bots. Now, the problem is that these are invisible and biased operations of algorithmic power, which violate values that are harmful to the autonomy of individuals. And from this perspective, the critique of morality of algorithms is particularly complex, but also relatively narrow if you see it. It ultimately concerns what algorithms do to people. And it usually depends on a common fundamental injustice, one between sorters which are people who are able to produce and analyze digital data, and the sorties who are able to find their lives affected by these analyses. So, based on this sorting, corporate and government decisions are made, but over which sorties, which are us, whose data is being taken from them, whose data is being analyzed on an everyday basis, have no control over. Following this school of thought, individuals' ability to express themselves freely is harmed and underpins other harmful procedures. By decreasing exposure to divergent views, facilitating the circulation of what is known as fake news, and allowing micro targeting of voters, such violation of diversity would harm our capacity to tolerate others and make informed decisions. This paradigm actually assumes algorithms to be digital and opaque artifacts controlled by sorters, the people who analyze our data and collect our data, in three elements. So, biased computational code, which is based on the digital data that is collected from us. Then, biased decision making, which affects us. And this is also followed by us having actually no control over it. What this assumes is that humans have no control over the data that is being used to make decisions for them. And this paradigm actually states that technical literacy is something that is missing, and because of the opacity, because of our inability to understand the black box algorithms that exist, pose an unprecedented threat to the capacity of users, academics, and policymakers to be aware of, study, and regulate digital platforms. So you see the problem here, right? That there is an asymmetrical distribution of moral agencies between sorters and sorties. And if human moral agency is the capacity of an individual to govern her behavior according to the moral standards, sorties can only be agents if they could intentionally entertain more moral considerations about their relationships with algorithms. So, critics of technological determinism have highlighted that it isn't that simple, it cannot be that linear. Social forces that shape the design and development of technology are itself sociology determined, they are socially constructed, and that technology has social structures which co-evolve in a non-deterministic way, and that effects of any given technology depend mainly on how it is implemented, which is also socially determined. So humans in an alternate paradigm are thought of as moral agents, which says that they are actors as part of the algorithms, and this includes non-experts and users. It states that end users are capable of moral agency. This in turn allows for algorithmic power and based on which how they consciously transform their ethical selves and the decisions that they take once they understand how algorithms function. Such end user oriented ethics of algorithms concern not only what algorithms do to people, but what people do to themselves and others in reaction to what algorithms do to them. Usually relying on actor network theory, it defines algorithms as assemblages of human and non human actors engaged in mutually constitutive relations. From this view, studying one actor in isolation, which is, let's say, the code or the algorithm here, is in principle misleading because actors' attributes are not possessed but enacted, and there is no insight to be objectively revealed. This co-constructivist take expands on as these assemblages actors. They include not only controlling data collection, code design, and algorithmic decisions, but also users of platform. These people may be activists, search engine optimization specialists, media professionals, and to like for this specific presentation, non-expert end users. This is an emerging and empirically based understanding that this kind of user can perceive the inclinations of behind the screen content curation. This paradigm argues that these perceptions explain how ordinary individuals behave differently from what is expected in the moral harm paradigm, which is by the technological determinists. They might internalize theories, self regulating their actions to comply with what algorithms expect, and devise strategies to game the unilateral changes. And I will give you a recent example. So, a recent uproar in the new WhatsApp policy, privacy policy, made a lot of people worried, which, and it also was circulated all over social media, wherein people were recommending alternate apps to be used instead of WhatsApp because the new WhatsApp privacy policy was violating privacy, as the experts said. This actually led to WhatsApp privacy policy being delayed in its implementation. And also, they made a statement clarifying their stance on what made people worried and explained further that they will not be sharing chats from WhatsApp to Facebook for business purposes. So, if individuals can somehow imagine platforms' algorithms, they can also somehow entertain moral standards when consciously acting in response to algorithmic decision. And this can build algorithmic accountability and fairness within the system. Let me move on to the next slide. So in this paper and this research by Soros, Deb, and Sinan from MIT, it talks about the spread of true and false news. It was conducted as recent as 2018, and the authors had investigated how the differential diffusion of verified true news and false news happens on Twitter. So they collected data from 2006 to 2017, and it comprised about 126,000 stories, which was tweeted by about 3 million people and read by about 4.5 million people. They classified news as true or false using information from 6 independent fact checking organizations. On analyzing the data, they found that falsehood diffused significantly farther, faster, deeper, and more broadly than the truth in all categories of information. And the effects were more pronounced for false political news as compared to news about terrorism, true news in terms of national disasters, science, urban legends, or financial information. They found out that false news was more novel than real news. And it transpired fear, disgust, surprise in replies as compared to in true news, It inspired anticipation, sadness, and joy. Contrary to conventional wisdom, as has been pointed out by experts in the previous slides, that robots accelerated the spread of true and false news at the same rate, implying that the news spread more than the truth because humans, let me point it out, humans, not robots, are involved in sharing it more as compared to the bots. United States has focused on the roles of bots in spreading fake news, and they also concluded that human behavior contributes more to the differential spread of falsity and truth than the automated robots do. So this implies that misinformation containment policies should also emphasize on behavioral interventions like labeling and incentives to dissuade the spread of misinformation, rather than focusing exclusively on curtailing bots and algorithms. Understanding how false news is spread is the first step towards containing it. The key takeaway for us from this is that humans are capable of understanding that if the news is false or true, if they become digitally literate, if they are provided with the right set of information and shared the key insights on what that information precisely means, there is a possibility of them not sharing false news anymore. They have the agency to share it, and also the agency of trained well in understanding the moral conundrum of sharing false news and how not to do it. The other question is if people can resist and understand or theorize social media algorithms without having the background and exercising human agency. Till now, we have figured out that false news is spread more by humans and they have the agency to do it or not to do it. Now we'll be figuring out if humans have the, if we as users can understand how to maneuver our way through these algorithms and how to theorize them. So a few days back, I was reading a paper by Sophie Bishop, which was written in 2019, titled Managing Visibility on YouTube Through Algorithmic Gossip. She builds on the concept of algorithmic gossip, which she defines as socially informed knowledge about how algorithms function and how can one manage algorithmic visibility. She talks about people such as beauty bloggers, social media influencers, and so on, who might not have a clear understanding of how algorithms function, but still maneuver their way around it by strategically managing algorithmic visibility. Here, algorithmic visibility is supposed to mean on YouTube, it could mean being on the trending page. On Instagram, it could mean being on the explore page. So when TikTok was banned in India, Instagram released its new feature, which was Reels, and asked all social media influencers to start using it. After some time, most influencers were heard complaining that the views of all of their other content, which was IGTV videos, their stories, their posts that they were making, had gone down. And only if they would post reels, they would be visible on the explore page and get more views. Some days later, this also changed and viewership on all content resumed, and this was also shared by all the social media influencers. Now, I got to know about these issues in algorithmic visibility that had been created by Instagram algorithms as they shared it, as the social media influencers shared it publicly and within communities of friends on how to make sure viewership is maintained. This is an example of how algorithmic resistance happens. One of the very important quotes that I felt were relevant to this presentation and to this debate is how content curation is co-produced by both users and machines. Since we have established that there is human agency involved in the fake news and that is shared by people, and people are also capable of maneuvering their way around algorithms, from here we will be moving to the interventions that can be made to the demand side of the problem. How can we ensure users exercise their human agencies in concrete ways? But there still remains one question that needs to be answered. If the algorithmic profiles that are made do justice to your real self, If not, then the argument of it being used to target you as a user for micro targeted ads for selling goods falls flat on its face, and because it's not able to determine who you are in the first place. So, titled Algorithmic Biographies and Fictions, Sophie Bishop and Tanya Kant conduct workshops prioritizing creative engagement with data. They have been conducting these workshops for quite some time, and they used to go to schools and colleges to conduct these workshops. It would take about 1.5 to 2 hours to conduct this entire thing. And they started doing it via Zoom once the pandemic had started. What they say is it is actually a non-tech workshop which uses creative writing and drawing techniques to allow social media users to understand their algorithmic selves. Through the ad preference profile that social media platforms create about their users, the workshops have a pedagogical function, and they use it as an opportunity to increase data and algorithmic literacies. Mostly, though, they steer participants away from doom laden prophecies of social breakdown and civil war, which suggests that the world is going to end and the earth is flat, and work on ensuring dynamic engagement with social medias in ways that increase users' understanding and agencies. The workshops are a part of a wider project that they have been working on, which is demystifying data profiles. What they do is they are collating and analyzing the writings and the readings produced by the workshops that they have conducted by the participants, and to understand how creatively they engage with algorithmic literacy and how participants represent their algorithmic selves through artistic engagement. The workshops have run so far to find some of the indicative findings. Firstly, and something that really struck me was that social media users predominantly find their digital profiles to be erroneous, absurd, and caricaturish. Users' data profiles do not fit within their own understanding of their own selves, and that's concerning. Also, a relief. Few days back, I also checked my how advertisements are shown to me on Facebook, and it turned out that I'm a person who likes children, is a parent, and is an alcoholic, none of which is true. So the second part is that these creative writing tools and drawing can be used as educational and engaging tools to promote algorithmic literacy for social media audiences. This fits right into the third wider finding, which is that these interactions of algorithmic literacy, these interactions of explaining to people how they can access their data profiles, how they can understand their data profiles, helps in making people understand that what they are sold and what the profiling, how that is done by the algorithms, is actually problematic. But they still contain a myriad of issues that need to be addressed because of how social media platforms are collecting our data. This is last slide, and I'll be concluding after this. I acknowledge that there are design flaws in social media platforms, and I'll also be coming at a more domestic example in the following slide, in this slide. And these problems can also be dealt with from the supply side. But we need to also solve the problem from the demand side, which is the humans, which is us. Viable models of technology fall somewhere within extremes and posit intermediate degrees of determinism mediated by complex and context dependent relationships among technologies, social and economic environments, and active human agents. In this aspect, in this aspect, social dilemma misunderstands human behavior and their agency. It diagnoses the problem half heartedly and panics on seeing the complexity of the issues. It can also be like if you've seen the video, if you've seen the movie, you'll realize that they discuss misinformation only briefly and make a linear logic that because of misinformation, more violence is happening in India. And they actually talk about Cambridge Analytica also in a very brief manner, but these are extremely complex issues. A broader understanding of technology as a result of social, economical, and political context would aid us in understanding the complexity of these issues and the role played by active human agents. I think one thing that has remained constant throughout the presentation is that data is being collected and insights are being built and information is being spread. What is what does that mean for us? That information is power for you, for humans, for users, and the social media platforms. And with using this information in a comprehensive way, if you're able to understand it in a comprehensive manner once presented with the information, we can make decisions to make sure that we are safe from the manipulation that is being cited by experts. So, when I talk about comprehension power, I am particularly keeping children out of the loop because the children with AI and children is a separate issue, and that is even more complex. So, algorithmic powers and algorithms may be the greatest determinant in socio-political and online interactions for information gathering, and without a multivalent literacy of algorithms, nuanced understanding of digital literacy and digital citizenship may be unachievable. Algorithmic literacy becomes an essential element for digital literacy for all stakeholders involved. Researchers have highlighted how intersectional aspects of gender, ability, socioeconomic status are strong predictors of how low digital literacy is. One of the incidents that a friend of mine recently shared was that his father actually received a message that he had won the KBC lottery. But and when he called them back, they asked him to call him back to receive the prize. They called him, and all the money from his UPI account was taken out by the scammers. Now, that is something that we can avoid if we can ensure digital literacy amongst people. Because if you have not actually registered for that lottery, there is no way in heaven that you will receive that lottery. Following a tradition of participatory rather than protectionist research about privacy online and social media manipulation by involving people in developing critical structure towards algorithmic based evidence for algorithmic literacy of how algorithms shape and produce interactions in everyday lives will help us in understanding how the ML value chain works. ML is machine learning value chain. At the present time, machine learning is being used to optimize processes and somewhere augment processes as well. But there might be a time with how the researchers have been going on that it will be able to understand creativity and reproduce creative outcomes. It will also be able to understand how complex systems such as critical thinking and intuition work. And since that will have an increasing role in our life, rudimentary tasks will be, and they'll be moving from more rudimentary tasks which they are doing right now to dealing with more complicated issues such as critical thinking or imagining for that example. For example, so it becomes important to ensure that humans in the loop can hold the system accountable and ensure systemic algorithmic accountability is embedded in the system. Now, I'd like you to focus on three things, which is anticipatory, anti-fragile, and agility. These are some of the abilities that will make sure that once the humans have the capabilities to understand the context of machine learning, they will be able to understand and optimistically use these platforms and algorithms. So you first, you have to detect and collect intelligence. You have to collect data. You have to collect information about how algorithms function. You need to understand what are the risks that you are exposed to. You need to understand what are the possible risks that you might be exposed to in the future, and be responsible netizens. Second, interpret the information, and for that you'd have to follow actually hard research, evidence-based research, and not any blogs that you find. The first blog that you find when you click social media manipulation might actually be manipulating you, because it's also based on an algorithm on how you'd be finding that data, that resource, and then implement those decisions. As Mehak has already mentioned in my introduction, AI Policy Exchange was also launched with the mandate of bridging the gap between individuals, everyday citizens, who might not be aware of how algorithms function but are still impacted by it, and academia, where all the research is happening in ways by sharing insightful blogs, by making insightful videos, by sharing insights on how people can stay safe by understanding how algorithms function, which are the risks that they are exposed to. Cyber Peace Foundation has also been collaborating with UN organizations and cooperates like Facebook and Google to support and create awareness on cybersecurity and online safety, especially for women and children, caregivers, senior citizens, specially abled, corporates, and academia. We had recently conducted a program for sensitizing mothers on how they can stay safe online. We have also conducted workshops for law enforcement officers to help them understand and investigate cybercrime against children. We have conducted cybersecurity awareness and online safety workshops with numerous state police officials. And in a program that we have recently completed, which is the Digital Shakti program, we promoted digital literacy in the first phase of the project for over 62,000 women. And in the second phase of the project, which was launched in February 2020, we spoke to about 1 lakh netizens. While this number remains small, we are still on a way of increasing digital literacy amongst different stakeholders who are very critical in imagining and reimagining how algorithms function. We are also conducting a cyber training and security for students and teachers to understand how cyberbullying happens, or how adolescents understand the cyberspace. I would like to end my talk with one simple note, one key takeaway, that there is an irrefutable need for establishing digital literacy among citizens to enhance human agency. A deeper and collaborative understanding of concerns will lend a helping hand in arriving at actionable solutions to policymakers. Thank you so much.
A very insightful lecture indeed. I'm sure the audience feels the same. We all have had an opportunity to go way ahead of what was already known to us, thus adding to our logic. Thank you, ma'am. As rightly said by Ms. Watts, digital manipulation by social media algorithm has affected us diversely. They transform our conscious ethical selves. Also, it has affected our autonomy largely, and we know that false news spreads much faster than the true news, and it is also because of the human behavior. So, it is very important to increase the human digital literacy. Now, we will be initiating our question answer round, and I would like to request Premlata to take over the question answer round. All of you can out your questions in the chat box, and we also try to ask as many questions as possible. But alas, we are time bound, so thank you. We'll be taking up questions now.
Sorry to interrupt. We have with us our principal ma'am, whose presence we have always looked forward to. And I would suggest that we hear her words of wisdom before we go on to the question answer sessions, because she has always been very supportive. And, I have always said that she has always been a source of encouragement, and her graceful presence always inspires us. So, ma'am, we just are done with our presentation from our second speaker. And as you're aware, the topic for our periodic lecture series is human technology and philosophy. So this is the second lecture of the series, and we just concluded on that. And now we would really like to hear your views on this. Welcome again, ma'am.
Okay. Good afternoon, Dr. Hemlata, and also our speaker for today, Ms. Antara Vats, Cyber Peace Foundation, all the philosophy department faculty who are present and who are listening so intently, and the students who are listening to Antara with keen interest and also exhibiting their views. They have a lot of questions, but I'm coming little way in middle of that. But I understand that today's topic, that is manipulation of human agency by social media algorithms, truth versus hype. This is very important because social media has become a part and parcel of our lifestyles. And it is so natural for us to pick up our phone and exhibit our expressions on any particular thing. And it is a natural instinct nowadays. We have become so part and this has become so part and parcel of our lifestyle that what is happening and what we are intending we really don't know, but we want to express our opinion. Of course, a human being have that expression that that we want to express ourselves freely, and democracy is all about freedom. We have all through democracy, first we asked liberty, then equality, justice, those things followed, but the first question was liberty, that we want our freedom, we want to express our opinion. As the rationality came in, we were just stressing more on freedom. But now what is happening is freedom, of course, was there when we were publishing our views in the newspapers, also reading, and then all along TV came. Then we had this internet news. But now news is being affected by what the people are doing because of the numbers, sheer numbers. Because if we are passing on some fake news, and then it actually changes the mindset of the people, it changes the entire scenario. And the example of America is in front of us. How Capitol Hill was actually attacked by a mass, and that is a really shameful for any democracy. So things are being manipulated there, and the people who are at the helm of affairs are trying to use the social media for their own benefit, to create their own following. And this is happening in many of the democracies of the world. And of course, the Middle East countries where the information is not there, or probably in China where the information is not there, these kinds of incident might not happen. But in most of the democracies, we are seeing the ill effect of the algorithms which are coming up, and the social media which is distorting the news, spreading the fake news. Journalists, for that matter, had some code attached to it. There was a code of conduct, and they were supposed to follow that code of conduct, and most of them were doing it. Otherwise, we could locate a person that this person has written something wrong, and we could question also. And the media trial and other things would happen also, and in due course that questioning can happen on a person who has spread something which is fake. But in social media, it is becoming very difficult to find out a person who is spreading, because a thing is shoots out at a particular moment simultaneously, and and what is the source, where the source is, it becomes really difficult. So these kind of things are happening, these kind of manipulations are happening. How they are happening, this is a real question. It is happening all through the world. So the need of the hour is that the people understand their own moral responsibility, that what they are doing. Because as I think Antara also said, whatever is negative, that catches us, and we are automatically, we try to read it and try to understand it. And positive news might pass off very coolly. And that is why if we are picking up a negative news and putting more negativity into it, it becomes a real problem. And that is why when we philosophy department has taken up this question, and it is basically to inculcate those values among the youth, that you should not be subject to these kind of controversies. Try to be a citizen who is responsible, and try to understand your own, of course, your own opinion you want to exhibit, but exhibit in a manner that things are not being manipulated, and things are not being distorted for that matter. And manipulation of course comes through the social media, and Australia, we know what kind of a thing is going on, that kind of a debate which is going on. And so things are going to change in due course. What I believe is, this is a kind of a transition phase where social media is at the helm of affairs. It is trying to take the lead because of the sheer numbers, as I said. But there will be some kind of a regulation, and already the beginning is there when Australian government says that there should be responsibility and the money should be transferred. So these kind of things are already taken up by the governments, and in due course many more things will come. What we have to see is time will tell us. But at our level, we should understand our own responsibilities, our own values, and we should not be a party to these fake news, and not to spread it at any cost, and not to be affected by it, so that we have a healthy relationship between the society. Because our last objective, and the first and foremost objective, is that we live conducively, we live in a happy manner. And if these kind of tensions and dissensions are there, then a lot of problems might come up. So that is why the youth should understand this, and the gesture of philosophy department to take up this very interesting and very relevant topic. So I congratulate them also, and wish all success for this periodic lecture series.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, for your inspiring words. Your words have always enriched us. Your optimistic view and motivational thoughts have encouraged us to do better always. Ma'am, your commitment towards work has shown us that everything is possible and we can achieve anything if we work hard and smart in the right direction. You have always guided us through all odds, and we thank you for all the faith you have shown in us. And now I would like to call upon Premlata to take up the question answer round. Thank you. Over to you, Premlata.
Thank, thank you, ma'am, for your insightful words. It has been very enriching for everyone present here. So now I would like to begin with the question answer session. So here are some questions. The question is regarding the role of technological determinism plays in shaping the political mindset of the youth. It is equally appreciable while also being unnerving at times for an individual. What is the way forward without violating the idea of digital rights? Where can we draw the line?
Thank you so much. I saw Indranuj has asked this question. Thank you so much, Indranuj, for asking this question. I think Dr. Harpreet, in her keynote, actually answered this question really wonderfully, and she explained how we can draw a line of understanding how political motivations have always shaped the news, and not just in social media. It has always shaped the news in offline media as well. So in television also, you see the news that is highlighted. That news also comes from a narrative that is being formed by the government and by the state. We have Mr. Arnab Goswami to salute for that. In any case, I wouldn't say it is primarily social media which helps in building the narrative. It has always been a supporter of building that narrative. And if we have to ensure that we as individuals understand what the narrative is, our digital rights are maintained, we need to understand where the news is coming from and the biases of the news. B, understand that the sources are legitimate. understand that the news that is being circulated is coming from right direction or not, and build a counter narrative. Because once we understand the first two things, it's equally important to build a counter narrative to actually inform the people, inform the youth about how this information that forms the dominant narrative might be misleading. I hope I've answered your question. Premlata, you're on mute.
Yeah, Premlata is on
I'm
mute.
so
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, sorry. Sorry for the interruption. Why, why is it even though we are fully aware of the manipulation dangers of the internet, we still don't quit it?
Addiction.
I think we still don't quit it because we also understand that it has a lot of benefits. It is helping us. During the pandemic, only we saw we were able to connect with so many people because of social media. We were able to conduct what Netflix party is and watch movies together with our friends. We were able to play games with them and use so many different technologies in so many different ways. It actually is a useful thing, so which is why it is also, even though there is the dominant narrative that it manipulates people into believing what it wants it to believe, we are not banning it because it is useful, and which is why you're not also able to quit it. But if you actually decide to quit it, I would not, like, I don't want to simplify the narrative of addiction and the problem of addiction, but you can. It'll take some time, it'll be gradually. It I wouldn't recommend you to just go on a digital detox, as people say, because there is research saying that digital detox is also not helpful in reducing anxiety of people. So what you do is you incrementally take that step, you gradually take it out of your life, if at all you think you need to take it out of your life. So first you need to answer the usability of it, and then answer that if you want to quit it.
True.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question. Don't you think so much critique of technological determinism, whether hard or soft, is taking us on some other realm because we have not explored enough of humanness in humans? We just ran after rational, scientific path. So don't you think the time has come that research for alternative methods to explore ourselves is the most important task, rather only discussing scientific algorithm and its criticism?
I completely agree with it. I think we need to understand humanness, because as I think algorithms, even in their most advanced stage, as of now, they'll get more advanced with time, but as of now they're not able to completely understand humanness. That is also because humans don't understand humanness themselves, and humans are the ones creating these algorithms, so they can also not predict ourselves in the most perfect way possible, because we can't predict our actions in the most perfect way possible. So there are requirements of understanding humanness, which is why philosophy and psychology are some of the two important fields which are going to be extremely important in the years to come.
Yeah.
Thank you for thank you for explaining it so well. Moving on to another question. How can we ever be confident or be our true selves if we are constantly being judged by everyone on social media?
It's a very complicated question. um, I think I will like to answer this question because this is a very, very complicated question. I would like to ask
Sure,
this,
sure.
the person who has asked this question, if you can reach out to me via LinkedIn or Facebook, whichever social media platform you're using, I'll be more than happy to have a elaborate discussion with you on this.
Sure, I'll let you know soon. Okay, moving on to another question. This psychological trap that is the urge to scroll the whole day, and the psychological and physical consequences of the same of the online world is so solely based on artificial intelligence, or do humans also play an equal role?
I think with my presentation, I answered that. The first part of it was how technology determines what outcomes we do, and how that argument or that narrative is flawed in itself. And we need to actually look at how users interact with technology as well when we are talking about technology as a whole. So human agency does play a role, and I think I did answer that question in the in the latter part of the presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Moving on to another question. With the growing impact and changing ways of manipulation, can we ever be fully aware of how these arguments work? Algorithm work.
We need to be constantly aware, which is why algorithmic literacy and the workshops around responsible tech are extremely important at this point, by constantly keeping aware. So one part of it is that users try to understand it themselves and try to keep themselves safe on their own. The other part is that they are helped by facilitators who already have the knowledge. Right now we do have facilitators, we do have NGOs working on it. Cyber Peace Foundation works on it itself. We can actually, and it does conduct workshop also, so workshops for online and digital literacy. That is something, that approach we can take to understand how algorithms function. And I understand, to completely comprehend how they function is something that would take a lot of time. It wouldn't be a part of one workshop or one presentation. It's a constant process because these technologies are evolving constantly and on a very tremendous rate. So we also need to be up to date with what is happening at that level. So I would suggest you take 1 hour to 1 hour and a half an hour to understand what is happening in the cyberspace, the risks that you're exposed to on a daily basis, if you can.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving us broader perspective. Next question. In a situation where we are completely dependent on technology for interaction, do you think there's a way in which we can keep ourselves at a safe distance from the harm it is causing? By Adya Joshi.
I'm sure we can. I'm sure if we understand the harms that we are exposed to, if we constantly work on increasing digital literacy for ourselves and for the people around you, because I shared a lot of key insights in during this presentation. If you share these key insights on how algorithms function, what data is collected, how the data is being used, you would be able to inform other people also about the risks that they are exposed to and practical ways of how they can maneuver their way around it.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, moving on to another question. As mentioned in the social dilemma, do you also agree with the view that artificial intelligence through these social media platforms pose a serious threat to humanity more than the climatic change or any other mass destruction in future?
That's a very big claim that they were making, and I actually don't support it, because with climate change also there is agency. Here also there is agency. You actually use your agencies in critical ways, and there are ways that you can maneuver your way around social media manipulation if you believe that to be true.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am, for answering all the queries so well and so patiently. Now over to Mehak.
Thank you, Premlata, for such a detailed and informative question answer session. I hope we all could get our minds thinking. Now, as we move towards the end of this periodic lecture, I would like to call upon Sheikh Mantasha, the president of our philosophy department, to present a vote of thanks. Over to you, Mantasha.
Yes, so sorry for the technical glitch here. Just give me a second. My laptop hanged. Good morning, good afternoon. So sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. The whole point of this periodic lecture series is to provide us with more knowledge and practicality of philosophy. This particular series focuses on interaction between human and technology and its after effects. So first of all, I would like to thank Ms. Antara Vats for her time and efforts to conduct such an efficient and interesting session with all of us. I highly appreciate you, ma'am, for sharing your views with us. I hope we get to understand the world of social media better now. We also are obliged to have Principal Ma'am Professor Harpreet Kaur and her enlightening presence amongst us. Thank you, ma'am, for inspiring us always and supporting us to learn, grow, and explore the world. Not to forget our faculty members. Thank you to all the professors for their constant support and guidance. Special mention to teacher in charge Dr. Himlata Krishnani and teacher coordinator Ms. Kirandeep Kaur and Dr. Jolly Singh. I would also like to thank the student council team and the technical team for their resilience. Thank you, Ms. Adhya, Ms. Premlata. Special mention to Sangeeta ma'am for always helping us last minute and throughout the whole session. Last but not the least, I would like to thank you all present here. We tried to conduct and organize a session and make it fruitful for all of us, but without your presence, this couldn't be possible. Thank you all for joining today. Hope to see you all again very soon in another part of this lecture series. Like always, please follow us on Instagram to stay updated with all the upcoming events. Thank you, everyone. Once again, thank you to the guest speaker. Over to you, Mehak.
Thank you, Mantisha. We all are indeed grateful for the session. Now, I would like to request all the students and faculty members to please switch on your cameras so that the technical team can take the screenshots. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Watts. Thank you, Principal Ma'am. It was really an enlightening session. I think we should, this is a very important question these days, and to, be responsible, like Ma'am also pointed out, moral responsibilities there. And like Ms. Watts pointed out that we should, be technologically more knowing in things, than to fall into trap of all this, so that we can use technology in a better way. And that is the solution, Rad. We can't be criticizing technology, because we are into it totally, and it helps us a lot too. So it is better that how this should be learned. We should be learning to know to use it in a better way, and that would be the way out, I would say. We cannot afford a critique of technology. So thank you, everyone. It was wonderful to have you all with us, and hope to see you all again in our